All right, Davy Wilson.
Hey, Austin.
It is good to meet you, sir.
Good to meet you.
Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure.
So, tell me about yourself. Let's just start from the beginning, I guess.
Okay, I moved into this area.
Well, hold on. Let's
Okay.
go back further than that.
Okay.
Tell me about where you grew up and how you grew up.
Oh,
Yeah.
you really want the beginning.
Oh yeah, I want to know. I want to know all about you.
So, born and raised in Mansfield, Missouri.
Okay.
The hospital I was born in no longer exists.
Okay.
That kind of as the town evolved and grew,
Yeah.
the hospital moved away. But born and raised in Mansfield, Missouri. We moved a few times in the interim, but spent the majority of my childhood and then high school years there in Mansfield, and graduated in 1990.
Okay. How big was your class back then? Was it a pretty big town? Or
No, Mansfield. We used to joke and say that the town, if you counted all the cats, dogs, and cattle, we might had 1,300 people.
Oh boy.
There. So it's a
So
pretty
probably-
small community.
Yeah, yeah.
What Mansfield's renowned for is the Laura Ingalls Wilder.
Yeah.
She
The farm out there.
the farm, and that's where she wrote all her books. The Laura Ingalls Wilder series, which later became a television series with Michael Landon. But
I've been out there once. It's a very neat, neat place.
it's a really cool thing. Through high school, I did in September they would do the Little Wilder or do the Wilder Days plays.
Yeah.
And so you had the Laura Ingalls Wilder play that would go on. And so during that time, I ran sound and audio for them for
Really?
the play.
Okay.
And then they
How
had
old were you when you did that?
I would have been 16, 17,
Okay.
somewhere
Nice.
around there. And then
Well, sounding. Well, I guess. Shoot, man. Yeah. What was audio?
so
Stuff.
it was
Yeah.
analog.
Analog stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we didn't
the
have
good
digital
old
stuff.
days.
So everything
Yeah.
was analog. Wired mics. We didn't have. I mean, wireless. We was kind of on the. It was around, but we didn't have it. I didn't have it with my system. And
Right.
the whole reason I had a sound system is I sang with had a little gospel group that me and my mother and a friend of mine, a little trio set up. And so we sang
Really?
gospel music, Southern gospel music.
What
when
was
I in
your
high
What was your
school.
group called, or did you have?
Resurrection Ministries is what we
Nice.
called it. And
You
found
ever-
out
You
later.
ever record?
We did a few demo tapes and that kind of thing, but mainly we just played all the small local churches,
Yeah.
fairs, any of the weekend celebrations like Apple Days or Apple Butter Days in Seymour,
yeah,
Missouri.
Yeah. I've been into that a couple times.
They
Yeah.
had the poke salad days in Ava. You had Mountain Grove Days. I forget what Mountain Grove did, what the name of theirs. Mansfield had Butter Days, and then they had in September the Wilder Days weekend. So we did a lot of that kind of stuff. We played a few high schools, and that was kind of a big deal back then because people they were really trying to keep the whole separation of church and state back then was kind of an issue.
Yeah.
So for a Christian, kind of a contemporary / gospel group to come into a high school
Yeah.
was kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
And as a teenager, fronting this little gospel group, it was kind of a surreal time because, here I am basically preaching the gospel as a teenager to other teenagers.
Yeah.
And, just trying to be real with them and real with people in that time, in that genre. And it went on to be, I sang with a group then. When I went to college, I sang with a group out of Springfield called Sweet Spirits. I don't think they're around anymore either, but I sang with their college quartet group. Did that for a few years and then came back, and I never stopped singing with my mom and my buddy. We just kept doing that on the side, just side gigs, but I would go out and do some of this other stuff. And it was a really great, kind of a great time, but ended up getting, I got married, dropped out of college when I was 19, I think.
Where do you go to college?
SMSU or MSU in Springfield now.
Okay. Yeah.
Went to college there and went a couple of years maybe, dropped out and got a job. And then I met my now wife, met Lydia. She was living in Mountain Grove and we connected through the Laura Ingalls Wilder play.
Oh yeah.
She came to watch the play and I went on stage to move some mics and ended up knocking all the mics over on the stage, all of them, all at once. And feedback was bad. Everybody,
Oh boy.
and of course, then the audience responded the way they're supposed to, which
Yeah.
is a standing ovation for my clumsiness. And when I looked out to take a bow, I saw Lydia in the crowd, and
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, I'm going to be sure to talk to her after the play's over with." And
Mhm.
I did, and here we are. We've been married now 32 years.
Yeah, you can't laugh
So,
too hard at that.
No,
I mean, it worked.
no, it worked.
worked.
It worked
Yeah.
out. But
I'm so sorry. Would you check your plug real quick? I just want to make sure that's all the way seated. It just looked a little bit far out. I
looked
sure
like it
hope
was-
I sure hope it
Yeah,
wasn't plugged in the whole time.
I think it was catching everything. So I see the bars
See the
bouncing.
bars?
So
Okay, yeah, that's good. All right, so
But,
knocked
yeah.
over all the microphones and everything, and
knocked the
and
microphones over.
got
Saw
her
my
number,
wife.
Got her number after that.
I did. I actually
Nice,
went up to
nice.
her and I got her to write her number down and write her name and
That's awesome.
called her the following Thursday. And I found out Thursday night was not the night to call because that was her night to watch television. That was, Friends, I think, or I forget what sitcom, Cheers probably. Something was on a Thursday night, but she's like, I stay at home on Thursday nights and I watch this one program. And so I'm like, oh, well, I actually appreciate that honesty because I was I liked watching TV, and there were certain nights I wanted to stay at the house and watch TV and didn't want to be bothered with it. So
Sure.
we got along very well from that standpoint, but ended up going from being
to pry on that just a
No.
little bit more. Do you guys like entertainment particularly, or well, obviously you're involved in entertainment working at this time.
yeah.
So I mean, do you like movies and stuff?
We do.
Okay.
Now it's funny. We both of our kids are grown up now, but when the kids, we would take them to movies, then they would always be playing rock, paper, and scissors by who had to sit next to mom, because Lydia would get in the theater and go, "Why is he doing that? What's going on next? What's happening now? What's the next thing going on?" She couldn't just watch. She had
to
to
analyze it the whole
and
time.
want to ask questions the whole time, and just so it got to a point that the kids were kind of tired of mom going to the movies, but we still, I mean, that we enjoyed movies. We actually, Lydia and I enjoy finding a program, and then we'll watch it.
Yeah.
Through the duration, like we watched was Yellowstone. Watched Yellowstone through the duration, and then here lately we watched that television show Shrinking, which I don't
I'm not
know.
familiar with that one.
I don't know that the Harrison Ford's in it.
Okay,
And,
cool.
I can't. The other guy's a real tall guy. You would know him. Anyway, Harrison Ford's the big name in that show,
Yeah.
but basically they're all psychiatrists, and then the struggles that they have through their lives and dealing with family issues and friends and whatnot, and it's done. I think there was 2 seasons, and we watched it, and we kind of enjoy doing that. Watch a season of something, and it's almost more fun than watching a movie because you get more out of the programs.
Right.
But yeah, we enjoy that kind of entertainment. We shoot archery. My wife and I shoot archery over at Shiloh Archery in Kirbyville, and we shoot right now. The last couple of years we've been shooting traditional archery.
Nice.
So we are having a ball just sticking a string and kind of back to the basics, and it's fun to have hobbies together like that.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, she started out, her profession was a florist, and so she likes doing decorating and making arrangements and flowers and stuff like that. And my hobby outside of the archery is making knives. So I like to, she comes to all the knife shows with me and sets my table. So I get there and I unpack stuff.
Yeah.
And then she makes it look pretty.
Nice.
So it looks
that's a good arrangement.
Yeah.
That's a good
she
compliment.
She
to
does
have
really
to your-
good. Yeah.
Well, okay. So talk me through a little bit about your career. So you started out of high school doing the
I started out of high school doing sound and audio. I worked in a music store for a couple of years, 3 years, 4 years. I play guitar. So that was kind of a natural. Working in a music store was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And then I started doing sound installations for churches.
Okay.
And a lot of the churches that you would find here in the Ozarks, Good Hope area, outside of Ava, Mansfield, Mountain Grove, Bradleyville. I mean, I did lots of sound installations in these small country churches that didn't have necessarily. I mean, really, most of them, what those churches had, if they had anything, was and you probably don't, you're too young to remember this, or even, I mean, you may know about it, but Realistic was that was the name of a little, like 4-channel powerhead that Radio Shack put out. And a lot of these little churches around, that's all they had was this little Realistic. They had a couple of small 10-inch speakers.
Just a little thing you pick up at Radio Shack, and that's where they ran the whole
and that's
sound
what
system.
they considered that their sound system.
Yeah.
And if they had a recording, a way to record audio at the time, at the most, it was cassette tapes.
Yeah.
And if I can't tell you the number of times that it would be the preacher would have a mic on the pulpit, and the mic wasn't for a public address system, but the microphone simply went into a tape recorder, a mono tape recorder.
Just
and
in the podium?
In the podium. The preacher would actually put a tape in, hit the record button, and then start speaking. And they would...
Simpler times.
It really was. And,
yeah.
and they would record like that because they knew, Sister Bertha was sick and out, but she wanted to hear the message.
Right.
And so they would record it on a cassette and then take it to her.
Wow.
So when I came in and working in the music store in the early 90s, it was really this progressive push to get sound systems into churches. And because I had a gospel singing group and had a sound system that I went out with, it was a real easy thing for me to, we would perform. And then when we were over, the pastor or a board member would come and say, "Hey, what could you do something like that for our church?" I'm like, we can actually build something more geared for public address and church as opposed to concert level, music. And back then, if we had, especially, and I don't mean to, I'm not speaking ill about these churches, but a lot of times the music that was played in churches, you had a piano and there was somebody playing a flat top guitar, and maybe you've got somebody that played a banjo or played a bass guitar or something. And that they would invite people to come up and sing out of hymns, and that's how that was their music. So they wasn't really pushing to have microphones and speaker systems to project. But as more and more people started coming to churches and the churches growing, getting bigger, they wanted a bigger sound system and wanted to be able to do more. And I'll keep saying you're too young to remember, but the big kick back then was if you didn't have a band, you bought background music, cassette tapes, or
right.
Eventually it became CDs. But
right, you run the track and then
you run track and get there and sing. And it's kind of like karaoke and church karaoke, basically.
Sure.
And we did that in the early 90s to death. It was it was awful.
Did it pay well for the time, or did you?
Oh no, didn't pay nothing.
Right.
I mean, if we got an offering at a church, they were doing. They felt like they was really doing you a big favor, and it didn't matter that you had just driven, 6 hours one way, dragging a trailer with a sound system.
Oh boy.
And there's 5 or 6 people that you're feeding. They got to eat. They got to be clothed. They got to.
Yeah.
And then you get there and they hand you an offering for $28 or something.
Oh boy.
And think they're really doing you a favor. And it was eye opening. At the time though, I felt like, and I think my folks felt like that we were ministering to people.
Well, how were you? Well, this is your only job at this point, I assume. Well, early career.
Early career,
right,
yeah.
You're still probably, 18, just fresh out of high school?
Yep,
when
pretty
did
much.
you kind of have to make a jump because of this? I assume because of the sustainability of that.
Well, so when I got married,
yeah,
I was 21 when Lydia and I got married, and Lydia had, we courted for a year and a half before we got married. And in that time, she would go and travel and watch us sing and kind of getting involved in some of that. And we really felt like it was a ministry. We didn't call ourselves Resurrection Band or Trio or whatever. We called ourselves Resurrection Ministries. Every time we went somewhere to play, we would pray with people and always would do what they called altar calls back then.
Yeah.
And would pray and minister to people. I grew up in my family. My mom I would have been 2 or 3 years old when my mom got filled with the Holy Ghost, and she was the choir director at the First General Baptist Church in Ava.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad would have been like Sunday school teacher or superintendent at the time. And I'm the oldest child in our family.
How many siblings do you have?
I've got 2 others. So
Okay.
little sister Stacy and my little brother Steve.
Mm-hmm.
And so mom gets filled with the Holy Ghost, and then the Baptist church kicks her out because they thought she'd lost her marbles. And
Sure, yeah.
so she found, some other Pentecostal Assembly of God type churches, and that was kind of what I was raised in growing up. And then she, I would have been, it was the early 70s, so probably 74, 75.
Yeah.
They went to, mom and dad drove it was a little Toyota pickup, one of them tiny Toyota, 70s model Toyota pickup. Drove it to Tulsa, Oklahoma,
Mm-hmm.
Broken Arrow, and dad and mom was in the front and I guess I was with them, and then loaded up a young guy that worked in the same grocery store mom worked at, Billy Everett is his name, loaded him in the back of the truck, and they drove all the way to Tulsa and listened to Kenneth Hagin and
Mm-hmm. Did they go to the
Kenneth
Bible college there?
Copeland. Yeah, when that, well,
Okay.
I think he was speaking at the, what do they call it, the Maybe Center, or
I'm
where
I'm not quite as
so
familiar.
it's the I think it was like a convention center in
Mm-hmm.
Tulsa, Oklahoma,
Yeah.
and I think it's the same building where across the street from Oral Roberts University.
Okay.
So we see Kenneth Hagin there, Kenneth Copeland, man, all those pioneers of the Word and Faith movement back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And so we see them. And so mom and dad wanted to find a church that kind of believed in that same,
Sure.
belief system or
At least speaking in the Holy Ghost.
yeah,
Sure.
just
Yeah.
believing in the
Yeah.
Holy Spirit and the gifts of the Holy Spirit and
Yeah.
the moving, God actually moving through His people. And
Mm-hmm.
and so when they came back, there was a Mansfield Full Gospel Church. And if mom and dad was here, they probably, I know they would remember better than I do.
Yeah.
But somehow we ended up at Mansfield Full Gospel Church.
Mm-hmm.
And Ronnie Baker was pastor there. He graduated from Rhema Bible Training Center in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And it was a full gospel church, and you'd hear people speak out in tongues at meetings. You'd hear people give an interpretation. You'd see folks get excited and go dance down the aisle. And then, as a kid, I'm just watching.
Yeah.
And I seen people get healed. I saw people get set free from, alcoholism and drug addictions. And they had a youth ministry. I'd never seen that before, or maybe didn't pay attention. But the older I got to see youth ministries. And one of the coolest youth pastors that were at the Mansfield Full Gospel Church at the time was Kevin and Susan Snavely.
Uh-huh.
And I think you know the Snaveleys real well.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom sang on the worship team with Kevin's dad and mom. They led the worship for Ronnie. And so my mom sang on the worship team with them. And so I'm growing up seeing these people, the Snaveleys, the Bakers, the Beatties, all these different people in this church that were everyday folks, but doing extraordinary things for the Lord. And that impresses you, especially when you're a kid.
Sure.
And not knowing any different, knowing, this is all I knew was that, there's a progression in the Word, and you can stop anywhere you want. You can learn what you want to and stop and be fine with that. Or you can continue, diving into the things of God. And not that I don't think one congregation's better than another. That's not what I'm saying. I just saw that in my parents' life, there was a progression. They went from, going and working in the Baptist church and actually, holding positions in that church to growing and reaching out and wanting to find and understand more. They didn't want to just, camp at one, and so they just kept going. The funny thing or irony about it all is now my parents, both of them live in Bradleyville down here, and they are actually going to my sister and brother-in-law's church, and it's Good Hope Baptist Church out in the woods. And I actually installed a sound system at that church back in the 90s. So, I mean, it's kind of full circle.
Yeah, yeah.
But they go, and now it's funny that, so, of course, it probably doesn't hurt that the pastor and the pastor's wife is the son-in-law and daughter to mom and dad. So if mom wants to speak in tongues or pray out loud or whatever, they let her go. They just, and then they, as long as she's not disrupting the service, which she knows better than that, but she just feels like she's like the grandma in that church and just loving on people. And so that's been kind of the dynamic or the journey of faith. So consequently, I answered the call to ministry when I was 17. I answered the call to preach when I was 20. I finally ended up in Bible school. My wife and I, during our second and third year of marriage, we moved to Texas and went to Jerry Savelle's School of World Evangelism. And we did that for 2 years. And then I did sound for Kenneth Copeland my first year that I was at Jerry Savelle. And then my second year I did sound for Jerry. And I did some stuff on the road for him, but mainly just worked in the school itself and making sure that all the recordings were happening, and because he had special speakers coming in every day, and they needed people to work towards that. And then when I graduated, because I had done sound for Jerry Savelle, Mylon Lefevre had just started his preaching ministry, and so I went on the road with Mylon, and I traveled with him for a little over a year. And by that time, my wife and I had had our son Stephen, and I realized that me being gone 4 and 5 days a week is not conducive to raising a child. And so Mylon had just gotten remarried, and it was like the perfect time for me to bow out from that ministry and focus on, raising, our son and focus on our marriage, me and Lydia together. And so I was offered a position at a church in Fort Worth, Texas, and so I ended up working in that church for 11 years, and I did led their praise and worship, and then we had an evangelistic team that we took out, and we started doing ministry in malls. So like the Simon Malls, we did Simon Malls from Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, all the way out to Georgia and back, and we would just go set up. And we had a dance team, flag teams, and unless you knew what the type of music, we were doing, we just sounded like entertainment and looked like entertainment. And that's how the malls billed us, we're just entertainment showing up. But everything we did from what they call them, human videos, we would play music and you would have actors out here acting out a scene and
Nice.
evangelizing, trying to evangelize the public at a mall. And, when you're doing stuff like that, you don't see what kind of impact you actually make. You don't see it. There was 2 instances that happened that it kind of solidified in me that we were doing something right. One instance, I had a person come up and asked if we were the band that opened for Third Day. And I said, no, but thank you. That's a very great compliment. Appreciate that. And then a second time we had a lady send us a letter, and we had done a mall in, I can't remember if it was Georgia or Oklahoma, but it was one of those places. And we got a letter in the spring of the following year from this lady. And she said, just wanted to tell you, me and my husband had come to the mall with the kids, and we were Christmas shopping, and we heard Christmas music. And so we came down, and you guys had played several, some Christmas songs. And then you went into some songs that she said, I recognized, but my husband didn't because he wasn't a believer. And she said, and you played some Third Day stuff and some Jars of Clay stuff. And she said, my husband actually sat down to listen. And she said, and then you did some, had some actors come out and do some acting with the songs going on in the background. And my husband, finally, after watching for about 30 minutes, got up and said, well, let's finish our shopping and move on. And she said that evening, my husband had asked more questions about the music and what they were saying. And is this the kind of stuff that you've been going to church and learning about? And she answered in the affirmative that she had. And he said, well, maybe I could use some of that. And so she was able to pray with him, and he started going to church. And then she said it was about a month after he had been attending church, had a horrible car accident and died in a car accident. But she just wanted to thank us for being bold enough to come to their town at their mall just to play music.
Wow.
And she said it really, it affected her life in a positive way, and that she has peace knowing that her husband, had a come to Jesus moment. So those two instances happened. And so, the fact that we didn't make any money doing this.
Yeah. Did you do that through your church at the time?
We did. We did that. So the church had this evangelistic team, and it wasn't a real big church anyway. It was kind of a small church.
You guys involved the youth and stuff like that? And,
every bit of it. So the whole youth department, all the praise and worship department, and then we recruited other people in the church to be the actors. And when you're taking
how many people in the cast obviously it varies from time to time.
The team
availability changes.
The team that we had that went on the road, there's about 18 of us.
Okay.
And then some of us would have to play. We'd have to play dual roles. So we would show up in a town on a Friday, and then we'd have to wait till the mall closed.
Yeah.
Once the mall closed, the security would take us to wherever their food court was, or a central place. There was only a very few malls that actually had a stage area set up where they could bring in entertainment.
Yeah.
So we brought a whole stage system that we had actually built ourselves, and we would pop all this stuff out, set a stage, set the backdrops, and we would do that overnight. And then Saturday, we would start playing at 10 a.m., and then we would play straight through to 6 p.m.
Wow.
And
that's a
no
full
breaks
day.
The whole time. So the only time we as a part of the crew would have a break is if the band wasn't playing and I wasn't involved in whatever action was going on stage, I could have a break.
You also acted on stage
I
while
would,
being in the
yeah.
Gee,
hard to believe, but
sure, yeah.
I would get out there because everybody had to pull every duty, and then we would have costume changes behind, and so we had set up dressing rooms, and all that was we carried all that equipment and showed up and did all that in those mall settings. So it was, and that was me doing that through my 20s, basically my mid to I guess my mid 20s to my early 30s or so.
How often did you do that? Like once a month or something? Or
once a month.
Okay.
Because if we did more than, and we did a few times where we do every other weekend.
That's a huge time commitment. It's like you got to practice leading up to it. You probably got to have at least a good week run up.
Oh yeah. So we in that church we would have, we had services Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night services, Friday night prayer meeting, and then we had Monday evening. The band would rehearse. Yeah. Tuesday evening, the play people would rehearse or whatever, and of course I'm involved in that. And then so we would have Thursday evening off usually, and then Friday we'd have prayer meeting. But at every meeting we had, our band would play, and we might not play a full 30 or 40 minutes, but we might play 2 songs or something. So we were constantly working on the skills, and that's I think a lot of people don't realize in ministry that you have the side that everybody sees, but then you have the side of ministry that most people don't see or don't know, and that's you're working harder behind the scenes than you are when ministry's happening, when the minister stands up and preaches for 45 minutes to an hour they think, man, that he comes off so easy, and it doesn't look like it's effortless. But what they don't see is the hours of preparation, the hours of prayer, or all the college time he spent doing public speaking, all the time he spent, and then with our worship team, I had played in a band or had a group that I sang with before, so I had experience doing stuff on stage, and had experience with sound systems and stuff. And the bass player that played had experience, but the drummer and the electric guitarist was the bass player's two kids. Yeah. The piano player was the pastor's daughter. And so you actually only had two people in the band that had ever had any band experience. And so we had these kids that were basically, we were just raising them up in this. So they actually didn't know anything different than what this was. And they just assumed that every church operated this way. And that's not the case. If you don't have a church that has an evangelistic team or an evangelistic outreach, then they don't understand, or they don't do that, maybe that portion of ministry. And not every church is the same, and nor has to be the same. Right. But that's what we did through our early days, and actually did all that until my wife and I decided that it was time for us to leave Texas and move back to Missouri. And my folks had kind of, they hadn't retired yet, but they knew they wanted to move to the Branson area. So they had sold the home in Mansfield and had moved to Branson in 2004. My dad worked at Lily Tulip, or a Solo Cup Company in Springfield. Okay. And my mom's a registered nurse, and so she had worked at several of the hospitals around, but was working in a nursing facility.
So what did your dad do? He did works on the blow mold for Dixie cups?
Actually, he did a foam extruder machine. Okay. For what initially, I think the first company was Lily Tulip, and then went on to had been bought out by Fort Howard, and another company bought them out. And anyway, Solo ended up being the last company that owned them. But that was the building right there on Glenstone in Springfield that had the big cup in the front. Okay. And so my dad, his career spanned 35 years up there. Yeah. And so when he lived in Mansfield, he drove back and forth every day to Springfield. And when he moved to Branson, same deal. Wasn't that different of a drive? Yeah, so much of a different, but it's still quite a drive. Yeah, so when they moved here to Branson, that first Christmas that they were here, we came from Texas for Christmas. And when my wife and I were leaving Branson, I told her as we was driving back to Texas, I said, if we ever decide to leave Texas, I want to move here. The people are just really nice here in the Ozarks, and especially in the Branson area. Everyone you ran it, whether it was people at the stores or the restaurants that were helping you out, or you ran into people that had come here to vacation, everybody was in a good mood. And that was our impression of the Branson area. And then there was always stuff to do. Dad used to say, if you get bored in this area, it's your own fault, because there's something to do all the time, any time of the day. You can go fishing, go to any one of the lakes and fish, or swim, or do the water stuff, or you can go into town and watch any number of shows you want to watch. There's no reason to be bored in this area. There's so much to do.
There is so much to do.
It really is. And so when we moved in 2000, the end of 2006, December of 2006, we moved down here.
Whereabouts in Texas? You may
Fort
have
Worth.
Said it, Fort Worth area? Okay.
Fort Worth, Texas.
North of Fort Worth? I mean, Fort Worth proper? Or
we lived on, we was just north of Highway 820. Okay. If the 820 loop, we was just north of 820, off of Silver Sage Avenue, which is just off of Beach Street and Roof Snow. Gotcha. In that area. So kind of the north Fort Worth, but heading towards the mid-cities area. Gotcha. That's where we lived in the Keller School District, which ironically is the most expensive school district in that area, and we were homeschooling. So we didn't get to utilize the school system, but we sure, Fort Worth, even then, the Metroplex, you don't know unless you see a sign that you've left one city and entered another. It is just, it's huge. Yeah. And we went there to go to Bible school. We stayed there to work in this church because that's what we felt like the Lord had had wanted us to do. And when we finally came to the place that we were like, we need to make a move, need to do something different. And we laid that aside. I had a business, a very successful business in Fort Worth at the time that I was partnered with a couple of the men in the church. And so I sold out my half of the business to...
what business were you in?
We did remodeling and building, that kind of thing. And
you
then
do kind of all manner of work doing that?
Yeah, all manner.
Gotcha.
I hate plumbing. I've often told people that I don't
flows downhill.
Yeah, I don't plan on going to hell, but if I did, they'd make me plumb the whole thing. So that's how bad I hate plumbing. So I kind of shied away from all the plumbing stuff.
Yeah, but you did electrical drywall,
framing. My favorite was trim. I like doors and trim. I like doing the crown molding.
That's what I do.
That's what you do.
That's
okay, well that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know if you know Dan Nelson, but
I don't.
Artisan home builders. He has a. He specializes in trim. He is a builder, but we mostly try to stick with trim. Is what he tries to keep us doing as much as possible, which is. It's nice. It is.
I love the aspect of this is the this is what the homeowner sees. This is the end of it.
Yeah.
Once that trim goes up, save for the paint. Guy comes in, paints or stains.
Right.
And then we had landed a gig with Rent-A-Center, which that actually afforded me I could move anywhere I wanted to just from that one gig I had with Rent-A-Center. I didn't have to. I sold out the residential side of the business and I kept the commercial side, and they didn't care where I lived as long as I could handle whatever stores they needed through the Midwest. So I had already been traveling for a couple of years with Rent-A-Center doing these build outs. They were putting these check cashing places inside a Rent-A-Center. So it's like a small bank walk-up window like you would have at a bank where you walk up and there's a teller there. And
it's got to be real secure.
Yeah. You cash a check.
Very kind of weird, specialized.
That was it. And we hooked up with a guy out of Georgia, actually, that had this gig with Rent-A-Center. And so we started, somehow we got connected. I don't remember the logistics, how we got connected with Chip, but Chip was connected with Rent-A-Center, and Rent-A-Center was right there in Irving, Texas. So that was their home headquarters. And so it just seemed like a natural thing for us to get in with them. And I traveled all over the country doing these build outs, and they had 3 different sizes. So when I moved we moved to Branson, I never missed a beat. They kept sending contracts, and I kept doing that. Now I did try.
So you got these contracts, and you had to go back down to Texas to fulfill the orders and build them out, or
no? I just went wherever they had they would send me the contract, email the contract to me, and the build out package, and then I would drive to wherever that. So like one Rent-A-Center was in Louisville, Kentucky, and so I just
it was already travel work.
Yeah, so I just drove to Louisville, and the package showed up at Louisville, and then I would pull out the plans that they sent me, and 9 times out of 10 the plans in what was actually the store was not the same. And so then I would take pictures of what the actual footprint of the store is, tell them what needed to change, and then if it was a big change, then
they do a refab on it.
And it always equaled more dollar signs. They just, and the cool thing at the time, they said, well, just add zeros and let's keep going, because they wanted it done and they didn't care how they got it done. They just they was glad to have somebody there. And
I'm sure that's pretty lucrative for the business itself, just being able to skim a little bit off the top of everybody.
Well, you think of it this way: their whole business started with, we're renting you appliances, furniture, televisions, that kind of thing.
Right.
And they're doing it on a monthly rental basis.
Right.
Well, then the biggest drawback to that business is people would show up and say, well, I haven't got my check yet. Can you extend my payment for a week? Don't come get my TV, Super Bowl's coming on. And they realize we're missing a part of the market that we should have, which is a payday loan, check cashing. And so they said, well, if you'll go over here to our bank, they can do a 2-week payday loan and get you caught up. We can go ahead and get you paid on your paycheck, and then you can go ahead and make your payment and not lose your TV. And so they were making money hand over fist.
Sure they were.
And I'm no disrespect. I'm not throwing any shade towards them, but that they know their market. And so I was making money by building these things out for them. And that lasted right up until the crash of 2008. And then when the crash happened, of course that changed. And you being in the building trades probably, you may be too young to.
Well,
to
I know
that,
I know there's a big difference in. Well, shoot, man, running up to 2008, you kind of got to be wary of houses nowadays that were built in 2007 and 2006 because of the boom. Everything was just being cranked out absolutely as fast and as cheaply as possible. We're working on a house right now for it's a 13,000 square foot house.
Okay.
It's on the lake.
Okay.
It's very nice. It was built in 2007, and it has got some major issues. Just because it's a mansion,
right?
But it was cranked out it was a spec. It was a spec.
Oh,
which
my
is
goodness.
Wild. And they were trying to crank that thing out as fast as possible. And there's some major quality issues. They had to pull out every window in that place and replace it.
Oh, no.
There's.
So it was a nightmare for somebody.
Well, kinda.
Yeah.
I mean, the people moving in they could be bothered less about it. They have another house in Florida that's $50 million.
Okay, so they're going to fix it the way they want
$5 million.
it.
Oh, we'll buy a quick, cheap $5 million house, and we'll just fix it up real quick, make it nice. But anyway, yeah, they're sinking some money into it a little bit, and anyway, but yeah, got to watch out for 2007 built houses. This one's an exception. We'll just ignore that.
Well, no, I mean this is great. I love everything's solid wood in here. So
okay. Quick tangent on it real quick, but the style of house that this was based off of a kit house. There's a guy out of New Hampshire, I believe it is. Anyway, he used to transport houses for the super wealthy from England to the United States. 300-year-old houses. He'd take them apart piece by piece.
Wow.
In England, ship them across, and rebuild them.
Oh, my goodness.
And, he was kind of like, man, these houses are really nice, and they're 300 years old, and they're still holding up. And, he was kind of dissatisfied with the idea that most houses in America nowadays, at the time when he started his business, were, stamped plans for 30 years.
Yeah.
50 years. They engineered, until you're going to need major maintenance on this house, stamped on the plan, we're planning for 50 years until you have major renovation needs.
My goodness.
Which is, anyway, so he wanted houses to be built to last, and he wanted to make them with modern lumber, so it would be easier to source. And so my dad really fell in love with the idea of that, and so he didn't buy the guy's kit.
Okay.
He was a bit too cheap to do that, but he copied his idea and just made it the way that he saw them made. He had videos and stuff up on the internet back then and on his website, and
that's way cool.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember if he's even still in business. I think he was talking. I talked to the guy once. He still answered the phone after however many years.
Oh my gosh!
But he will actually sit down and make a plan with you if you want, and in 2021. So he talked to me. He said that he was looking at selling the business because he was getting tired of dealing with it. And
how old was he?
The material cost was going through the roof at the time, so he was like, it's better to just build a cheap house. But anyway, I think he's in his late 70s at this point.
Wow.
But anyway,
that is awesome.
I'm trying to remember. Oh, First Day Cottage.
First Day Cottage.
First Day Cottages is the guy's website, and his business name is so. Anyway, he's got an interesting.
I'm gonna look him up. That's cool. I just like the background story.
Yeah.
Of hauling houses over here, taking them down over in England, and then bringing them here and putting them back together, and they just be right.
Right.
Just
label your pieces, and but it's pretty simple for the most part. I mean, look at this thing. It's like this roof truss.
Yeah.
Is kind of a one unit.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it slots right into these sides, and you just slide them right down in. So you take those apart, you label them, and then you have these H frames. Yeah. And you just it's super simple. But
see, I love that.
Yeah, it's really interesting
and
stuff.
it has to me, a house like this has way more character than the stick-built houses from the 70s.
Right.
That were, they like you'd say, a kit house. They just they did the construction. I mean, the house that we live in here in Branson was built in 76, and we just recently, actually today, they finished installing our new air conditioner. And when the HVAC guy came out to look at it, he said, I'm not real sure how old your air conditioner is, but he said, I can tell you this. He said, it's old enough that all the parts are made in America. So that's how old this system is.
That's kind of cool.
And when he finally got into it, he said it's between 25 and 30 years old.
Oh, boy.
That system was. He said, no. He said, these new systems, he said, we guarantee the parts for 10 years. And he said, and if you get more than 10 years out of a new system, you've really done something. And, and that's a sad fact of where we live at in today's age is we just make disposable stuff. But I'll tell you this, I don't care disposable or not. When I walked in the house and it was a cool 72 instead of what I had last night, a swarmy 84.
Well, shoot, man, how long did you have that house before? I mean, has the AC been working just fine up until
So
this past year?
Exactly. The air conditioner was working fine. I'd had one of my clients, I've got a barber shop in Hollister. We'll get to that.
I want to get back to your career in a second.
The house, I had a guy come out and look at it 8 years ago, and he said, man, he replaced a starter capacitor on the compressor, I think, or something like that.
Yeah.
And got it fired back up, and he said, man, whatever you do, if you can keep this thing running, he said, you're going to be money ahead. And he said, so let's see if we can keep it going. So, like I say, if the units, say it's just 25 years old, and 8-10 years ago he replaced a capacitor, so at 15 years it finally burnt a starter capacitor off of the compressor, and he replaced that, and it made it this far before the compressor finally went out. And, it was going to cost several thousands of dollars to replace parts in it. And they weren't even sure they could get the same parts anymore. So they was going to have to Frankenstein the area. I said, you know what, just let's go with a new system. And they did their best to save me as much money as possible. And I appreciate that. Dale and Kenton Wallace, they were the father-son team that put my air conditioner in today. But, the quality of building, just like you say, is when you have a structure built like this with solid wood, solid framing, so much better than when, we remodeled the bathroom in our house a while back, and it had particle board floors. At that time in the 70s when they put that in, that was probably, hey, this is really great stuff. And we've learned over the years that particle board is just fancy cardboard. So
if you breathe eventually on it too much, it'll get all swollen.
It's going to swell and break apart, and then you're going to need to replace it. But anyway,
Meemaw broke her hip falling through the floor.
Exactly. Yeah. Or if you have a joist finally rot off of the your base plate, and the joist rots off, and then when the joist falls, it actually pulls all the nails out of your particle board. So stuff, like you said, stuff built in 2007, 2008, they were doing stuff very quickly and trying to crank stuff out. I think may have been a time, I mean, who knows? I was a kid in 76, 5 years old, but I'm satisfied when they built that house in 76, it was just a stick built house, and
right.
It's it's a wood framed house, but it's not got brick on it. It's not got.
Has it got the actual rough sawn 2x4, actually 2x4 studs?
No. They're what we consider what you would buy today.
Okay.
So they weren't rough sawed, but by any means. But it was the
ones on this house before it was
were rough sawed.
Were rough sawed. I think this was like a 1950 built something. It was maybe 55 and it had some additions on it, but. Yeah.
But anyway, back to Rent a Center. I finally got past them in 2008 when the market crashed and that kind of folded up. It was the first time in my life that I didn't have a job, that I didn't have. It's the first time I ever got a phone call that said, Davy, we can't honor those contracts that we've sent you. We're kind of circling the wagons, and we're pulling out of this. And I said, okay, thanks for the opportunity to work, and towards the end of that conversation with that gentleman from Texas, he said, you're the only builder, subcontractor that we've had that hasn't talked about suing us. And I said, well, why would I sue you? You haven't done anything wrong to me. Well, you had these contracts from us that are signed, and that this work is what we contracted for you to do. I said, yeah, but everybody's having troubles. It's not like you guys just are firing me. You're not building anymore. There's nothing there. And I said, that's what you're telling me. And they said, yeah, that's it. And I said, I'm sorry you guys are having trouble too. I said, I'll find a job. I'll bounce back. That's no problem. And it's funny because years later, when I had my barbershop open, working in the barbershop, I get a phone call, and it's this gentleman from Rent-A-Center. And he said, Davey, we'd like to offer you a job, see if you'd like to go back on the road for us. And I kind of laughed. I said, well, I sure appreciate that, but I said, I've got a very successful barbershop. I've kind of shifted gears, and I'm not building anymore. I said, I sold my trailer and my tools, and I said I'd have to almost start all over again to do that. I said, but I don't. Why would you? I mean, I appreciate that you called me back, but I said, they said you was the only person that didn't sue us, and we remembered that. And I said, I wouldn't. That didn't seem right to me to do that. I said, but thanks for calling me back and good luck. And they told me good luck, and so I felt like we parted as friends. And but yeah, when that folded up with Rent-A-Center, that same year I had a car accident on the old Taney County Bridge. Had a guy rear end me in traffic. He was doing about 60 when he hit me, and I was sitting still in the middle of the bridge. That's back before the roundabout. It was a stoplight there.
Yeah.
He rear ends me, and it caused a 5-car pileup.
Wow. So you were at the back of the line.
I was the initial contact. When he hit me, I was the first contact. And I was in my wife's minivan, had just filled it up with gas and was bringing it back to the house.
Well, that's good. I guess you had a good crumple zone on that thing with a big area.
Big crumple zone.
Yeah.
It broke the driver's seat. So he hit me hard enough, it broke it off the mounts and pushed it forward. And then when I hit the car in front of me, it threw me backwards, and then the back of the seat broke. And so it threw my back flat, and so it was almost like my hips were higher than my back, and I'm laying down. Yeah. And I'm laying there, and there's this moment of just, when everything stops and it's kind of silent. I'm laying back in this deal, and then I hear somebody cursing. Really, I mean, just a string of obscenities, and I thought, well, I'm not going to lay here and take a cussing from nobody. And then I tried to move to get up, and I couldn't because something had Jill flirted in my back and my neck, and I laid back down. And I thought, I guess I will lay here and take a cussing because I'm not moving from this vehicle. And they eventually, when the paramedics and everybody got there, they got me out of the minivan. And thank God that it had those sliding doors, and they were when he hit that minivan, he hit it so hard that the doors popped. And they were able to peel the doors back so that they could get me out without like jaws of life or anything. Yeah.
Did you have like a spinal injury?
Yeah. I didn't have spinal injury. I had a back injury, and you know how your neck has a natural curvature like this? Yeah. It moved mine the other direction. Oh. So my neck went the other way, and from those injuries, I started having vertigo and migraines, and I couldn't. If you've got vertigo, you don't need to be climbing ladders. You don't need to be walking on stilts, hanging sheetrock. You don't need to be doing anything like that. And so I realized I need a new hobby. I need to find something else to do with my profession. And I've got two grade school age kids at home, and my wife, and she's homeschooling, so she's not working a job. And, at that point I had been making more than enough money to take care of the bills and take care of
is that through the barbershop at this point?
No, I wasn't at the barbershop. I hadn't even started barbering yet. I was just a builder, and not saying just a builder, but that's what I was. I had one business, and it was building. Yeah. And that car accident happened. Then they rent a center. All that thing folds up, and I had started helping my uncle Dwight Wilson. He's down in Douglas County. He builds a lot of ranch style homes and barns and hay barns and that kind of thing, and a lot of metal buildings. And so I connected with Dwight, and you got anything going on, any kind of work? And he's like, well, pile on in, we'll find something for you to do. And so I started working with him and jumped in, and he had a small crew. So I just did whatever they had available to do, and glad to jump in and help. And my uncle's a master carpenter. And I just remember towards the middle part and the end of 2008, there were other master carpenters he knew, and they would fight over a $10 an hour job. And I thought, here are guys that any other time would have been demanding $50-$60 an hour, and now they're fighting over $10 an hour just to find anything to do, because the market, right? Everything had circled as well. The nation had kind of right. We'd had a big recession, and me and my wife, we began to pray about what I needed to do, because the injuries that I had sustained in that car accident, because I was never one of those general contractors that just get out of the truck with a tape measure and a pencil and a clipboard. Every time I got out of my truck at every job site, the first thing I did was put on my pouches and grab a pencil. That was what I did. And it didn't change. I did not feel like I could continue in that profession and continue working the same way I had worked. I didn't know any different. I wish I was smarter than that, was able to, just point and tell people what to do and stand there, and maybe I couldn't shift that way. So I needed to do something totally different. And a friend of mine had invited me and my wife over for a cookout, and I didn't know he'd invited a lot of other people over too. And so we get to the cookout, and he introduces me to one of his friends, Sam. And so when I meet Sam, he tells me that he'd just retired. And I said, how old are you, Sam? And he was 2 years older than I was. So he was 38, and I was 35, 36, almost 36. And he said, well, he retired from working for the police department. And he said he had started working for the city of Bolivar for the police department when he was in high school. And then when he graduated, he went into the Army. Well, they had a policy in Bolivar, Missouri, where they would marry your time together, I guess. And so when he came back from the Army after doing 4 or 6 years, however long it was.
Oh, that's cool.
When he came back, he went back to work for the police department. They just kept his time. And so by the time he was, I guess 38, he got a form letter that said, hey, you're eligible to retire. Is that something you would, so you're eligible to lock your retirement in, I guess.
Sure.
And he said, for 20 years I'd seen the rough side of life, seen people at their worst. And he said, I was ready to see people when they're not at their worst. And he said, and I've always wanted to be a barber. And so he says this to me, and I said, really? I said, well, how do you learn to be a barber when you've been a cop all these years? How do you make that shift? And he said, man, I'm going to barber school in Springfield. And I said, well, tell me more about this. So I'd never thought about doing anything ever like that. I mean, I was always one of those guys, if I got a haircut, especially when I moved to Texas, it was just whoever was available and kind of a, spur of the moment. I need a haircut. I'm looking shaggy. And so I'd go get a haircut. I didn't think nothing about, I just never thought of it as a profession. And so my wife and I prayed about that. And then I thought, well, I'll just go talk to him at that school. And I went and talked to him at the school. And it's funny. Had I went to barber school the previous year, it would have cost somewhere around $400 to $4,500 $4,000 to maybe $5,000 for barber school.
Yeah.
And they had it in such a way that you could kind of pay as you go. Well, when Obama got elected, he kind of did away. He made, I think he had a speech actually where he said, I want everybody to be able to finish their education. So we're going to open up college loans to trade schools and make trade schools available, because prior to that they weren't. You couldn't get a college loan for a trade school. You just paid out of pocket.
Uh-huh.
So wouldn't you know it, they opened it up for student loans, and the barber school went from $4,000 or $5,000 to $12,500 because ironically that's what you could borrow.
Yeah.
In a student loan for one semester was $12,500. So anyway, I said, well, if I can, they said, have you ever had a student loan? I said, oh yeah, I had a student loan, paid it off. And they said, well, we can see if you qualify for another one. I said, well, I guess if I do, I'll get a student loan and go to barber school. And 5 minutes later, they said, well, we got you qualified. You're going to start this year, and we'll get you started next week. And so I shifted hard from building, and had done that for years. And, I was always in the ministry. It was always bivocational. I always worked a job and I did ministry. Just that one short period of time when I worked for Milo Lefevre, did I ever rely 100% on the ministry to pay the bills, and consequently it couldn't pay the bills. It was that old adage where you throw all the bills in a hat and you draw out 5 of them, and the rest of them we'll try to pay next month.
Oh boy,
that's not a good way to live. It'll mess your credit up, just so you know. But fast forward to go to barber school. I get out of barber school. I worked for a year in a salon, and I was kind of a unicorn in the salon. I was the only straight guy working there. So,
did you have your beard at that time?
I had a beard, but it was probably more your length. I didn't have the mustache going on at the time, but had a shorter beard, and I had more hair on my head at the point, and I did that for a year and saved my money, and I had bought out a barber named Ron McLeese. And so I'd bought all his equipment, but I didn't have a place to land. And so after that year of working in that salon and kind of building the business, and hard work was never a question for me. I just worked all the time. And so after building that, getting it built up, the business going, I was able to get my own spot, and that became 2008, 2009 is the first year of Wilson and Company Barbershop, and we opened it in Hollister, Missouri there, and not in the same building that Ron was in, but next to it. And it was just a simple one-chair shop at the time. I ran as a one-chair shop until four years later was able to move down the street to the location that we're at now, across the street from the Hollister Coffee Company. And that used to be it's been several things, but I think before I got there, it was an Army surplus store. And so we came in and kind of repainted, redid it a little bit. I was able to add a second barber, and it's the barbering business was a great transition. I love people, and I love being around people, and I don't have any trouble talking, as you can tell. So that really played into my wheelhouse, and I just took to the barbering thing. And I think the thing about being a trim builder and doing trim work and doors and windows, kind of that final thing, there was something about barbering that felt the same way. So when I turned, I cut someone's hair and then I turned them to face the mirror, and that first look that they get to look at themselves. And if you boil it all down to its most simple form, the only thing we ever see is just our reflection. We've never actually looked and seen our face. So what I realized is I need to cut your hair in such a way that when I turn you to the mirror and you see your reflection, you're seeing the same thing I'm seeing, and that I need to see you smile. So when I turn you to look at the mirror and you go, yep, that's just what I wanted. That was just, yep, that haircut looks great. Thank you so much. I love how you did my beard. There was something about that. that the similar satisfaction when a homeowner would come in and we remodeled their master bedroom and their master bath, and they walk in it the first time and they're like, yes, this is what I envisioned. This is what I wanted. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of that whole thing of managing expectations, right, and, leaning into what people's habits are. In the first 30 seconds of visiting with you in the barber chair, I'll find out pretty quick how much time you spend in the bathroom before you go to work, fixing your hair or fixing your beard, or, you've got a great mustache. So what that says to me is you're willing to spend the time to get your mustache to curl and put the product in, mm-hmm, and to make it do what you want it to do. Otherwise, you would just have everything shaved to the same length. And when you would sit in my chair at the barbershop, if your mustache wasn't styled up like this, then when I got to the point when, hey, we're going to trim your beard, what do you do with your mustache? How much time do you spend doing your mustache? Most 9 times out of 10, I don't do anything with it. Can you just keep it off my lip so I'm not eating it when I'm, sit down to eat dinner?
Not flossing when I'm eating a burger. Yeah.
And, I can do that. Or I turn around, with, like, example, I'd turn you around and said, let me tell you about the mustache wax I use. Mm-hmm. You're going to really like this wax. And I'm going to talk to you.
While we're on the topic, okay, I'm kind of curious what you use, because that's quite the handlebar.
I'll give a shout out to Brett Krismer mustache wax. So okay. Brett is an old hot rodder, and he's in Republic, Missouri. But he makes this. It's Brett Krismer's mustache wax. It's just that simple.
Is it kind of like is it more of a wax? Is it kind of tacky?
It is tacky. He adds, so in my batch, so the flavor I like is redwood embers. It's got kind of a cinnamony campground, kind of, firewood smell, pretty nice, masculine smell.
Okay.
But he puts extra pine tar in my mix, because when you start doing a long handlebar, or even if you want to make the curls, when you start doing that, you need extra whole value, and you get that from the extra pine tar.
Gotcha.
Most mustache waxes have beeswax and a little bit of coconut oil, and they'll have some type of essential oil for the smell, the fragrance. But with Brett adding pine tar, it adds a lot of, it helps really lock it in.
I can imagine so. Now, pine tar is
tacky,
sticky stuff.
It's sticky, and I mean, truth be told, when I go to wash it out of an evening, it takes a little bit of Dawn dishwashing liquid.
Okay.
So I mix a little bit of that into my shampoo, and it'll break it down, and I can get it out of the mustache. Otherwise, you're going to get some breakage and stuff.
Gotcha.
But I get a lot of comments about the mustache. But when you own a barbershop and you have a beard like this and a mustache, I sell a lot of beard wax and a lot of mustache wax.
I'm sure you do.
So
I'm sure you
do. There's not a lot of professions that you could wear a long beard or wear a long mustache.
Could. I get dust all up in it.
You
by
get
the end
dust,
of the day.
or you get it caught in a drill. That's a real thing. And the hand tools.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, you. And I have people ask me all the time. They say, "Well, it looks like you trimmed your beard." And I said, "Well, actually, I was lighting the forge, and I caught the bottom part of my beard on fire. Dragon's breath got me, So
let's talk about the blacksmithing a little bit real quick.
Absolutely.
Because I want to touch on that. How did you get into blacksmithing then?
So my dad and I, we'd moved to Branson in 2006, and in the fall of 2007, Dad had worked with a guy at Lily Tulip named Tom McGinnis, and Tom is a bladesmith, and he's out of Ozark, and he offered quarterly, every quarter, he would do a knife making class. And so
he sounds like a very Scottish kind of guy. Was he very much into his Scottish heritage? Or
maybe a little bit. He was more. He went the mountain man side of things. So
okay. Sure. Yeah.
He did.
There's a ton of Scots-Irish down in Appalachia. Yeah.
He did the mountain man side of things. And there's magazines where he was on the cover with all his leather, rawhide stuff that he built. I mean, he looks like a mountain man. Tom did. He's since passed away, but Tom was a master bladesmith, and so me and Dad paid for the class, and the deal was it was a 2-day class, and Tom said, in this 2 days you'll make a knife, and if at the end of class you're dissatisfied with what you made, I'll give you your money back and buy your knife from you. And he said in the 30 years that he'd been doing this class, he said not once had he had to buy someone's knife.
That's a pretty cool business idea.
It really is. And so
a way to frame it.
Yeah. Dad and I, we took the class, enjoyed it immensely. And it was something I'd never done before. So I'd never worked with that kind of, swinging hammers. I'd never worked with stock removal. I had not heat treating, metallurgy. I knew nothing about this world. And within 8 hours, by the end of the deal, Dad and I had made 2 knives. And on the way back to the house, had actually said, we got talking, and he said, would you like to do this again? And I said, yeah. I said, what do you think it'd take if we just bare bones started buying some equipment, what could we get? And so him and I started throwing a little extra money, and we started out with a Grizzly 2x72 belt grinder that we bought out of the scratch and dent shop at Grizzly.
Nice. Yeah.
Give $250 for this grinder.
Yeah.
You can still buy this grinder, and it's like close to $600 now, but $250 for this grinder, and we bought some oxyacetylene torches and a rosebud, and we would use that to heat treat our blade, and then Dad welded together a little trough that we would edge quench our knives in. So all the knives we made starting out were just a pretty rudimentary hunting style knife, to have a 3 to 4 inch blade on it, a full tang. And that was what we started out making. And we found a Damascus supplier who consequently I still use their Damascus, Alabama Damascus, out of Jacksonville, Alabama.
They just send you stock? What does their stock look like
billet,
when you get it?
So I can buy a billet from them, and the billet would measure 3.5 inches by 14 to 18 inches long, and it would be whatever thickness that I like to work with. So when Dad and I started, we worked with 1/8 inch thickness. He said that's just I think that's the right, that was the thickness that we made our first class knife, was 1/8 inch.
Sure.
So we just kind of, there's an old saying in Texas, you dance with the one that brung you. And so we were still dancing with that old broad. We was going to stay with 1/8 inch steel. And so we started making these knives, and I'll be honest, there's a few of those first knives floating around, and they're kind of ugly, and they're pretty rudimentary, but they're great steel. We learned how to heat treat and temper, and to me and to my dad and the whole knife community, the separation of someone that's just a hobbyist against someone that really wants to get into it is that ability to heat treat and temper, to cause that steel to go from a soft state to a hardened state, so it stops being just a billet and becomes a tool that you use. And there's a message in there somewhere about going through the fire and coming out stronger on the other side. But ultimately, that's the truth about the knives we built. And so from that first time knife we built in class to the knives that I finished up last weekend, I still hit the same Rockwell hardness of 58 to 60.
Nice.
Now my equipment has evolved, and my skill set has evolved, and I'm doing things now that I never dreamed I would have done when I first started. But my little hobby has become my second job, and I love doing it. I love making knives. We call our knife company Jehu Knives. Jehu was a prophet from the Old Testament, prophet that became king, but he was maybe best known for killing Jezebel. But it was my uncle's nickname. My dad's just younger brother, Howard. He had died in 2004, 2005. He passed away. Anyway, when Howard passed away, his nickname was Jehu. And so when we took that first knife making class, you get to a point in the building of the blade.
I see what you did there.
Yeah. You come to a place where you put your touch mark on the blade, your maker's mark. And so everybody was putting their initials, hammering their initials into it. So I asked Dad, I said, do you think it'd be okay if I stamped Jehu in honor of Howard on this first knife. And he said, I think he'd be happy with that. And so I did that. And then when we decided to just continue making knives, Dad said, why don't we keep that Jehu name? That would be that's a neat name for a knife company.
It is.
And so we stuck with it. They called Uncle Howard got that nickname as Jehu. They said they called him Jehu for he driveth his chariot furiously. And that was my Uncle Howard. Dad tells a story that at one time back in the late 60s, you'd been hard-pressed to find a transmission for a 64 Impala in the 3 counties surrounding Douglas County because Howard had shelled just about every one of them out. So it was he came by the name, honestly. But we took that name for our knife-making business. And, years later, the show comes out in 2015.
Yeah, how did you
Forged in Fire?
Yeah, how did you come about to be on the show? Did you first off hear about it? When did you hear about it?
So when I saw the commercial, coming up, they started advertising it in leading up to 2015 when they had that one season. So it was slated for just one season, and it was actually a filler show. I found this out later. It was a filler show because you had the legend or something of Oak Island. Do you remember that show on History Channel?
I don't.
The Secret of Oak Island
Growing up, I only ever had TV for 1 year.
Oh, okay.
We got Dish for 1 year, and then 2008 happened, and we were like, okay, we got to cut expenses. We're not going to do that.
Well, I don't blame you for cutting the TV out.
DVDs and VHS.
Very
tapes.
good.
Yeah,
okay, the show came out in 2015, and it was a filler show to go between the seasons of Oak Island.
Okay.
So Oak Island has a cliffhanger season here, and then they're going to have I think it was 10 or 11 episodes of Forged in Fire, and then Oak Island would come back in the fall. And so it was just a summertime filler show. Was not supposed to go anywhere.
Yeah.
When that first episode aired, it had a higher viewership than the NFL football game that year.
Wow.
For a first episode on cable.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just higher viewership for a cable show. It was the highest viewership for any show in the history of television. And it was a knife-making show. But people were fascinated. And so that first season was so successful that it led to season 2, season 3. And I think now my season I went on was season 8. So I had got to watch this show evolve.
So you were well aware of it.
I was well aware of the show.
Did you reach out to them, or did they reach out to you?
I didn't reach out to them because every time I watched an episode, they always had either an American bladesmith, master smith would be a contestant, or journeyman smith would be a contestant, or someone that's been a blacksmith for 20 years or 30 years. And so,
how long have you been smithing at that point?
Since 2007. So about by the time that I got to go on the show, from 7 to 2019, what is that? 14 years?
Yeah.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And so that was the amount of experience I had. But Joe Smith of Silver Anvil Forge had moved into the area, moved here from Oklahoma.
Yeah.
They opened Silver Anvil Forge there on the landing. He came to my barber shop to get a haircut. And when he walked in the door, I recognized him because I had seen him on Forged in Fire. I'd also seen him on Knife or Death, the bladesmith, the blade chopping competition. And so I was a fan. Yeah. And so when it finally got Joe's turn to come to my chair, I just came around and shook his hand. I said, I know you. I've seen you on Forged in Fire. He said, well, my name's Joe Smith. I said, I do. I know you. And he said, I had to come meet the knife-making barber. He said, since we've opened our shop over here, everyone that's been local that has come in has asked me, do you know Davy, the knife-making barber? And he said, I feel like I almost need to get your permission to continue doing. And I said, dude, you don't need. I said, I'm fascinated by what you do. And so he started talking to me about the way he bladesmiths and the different things he does. And I said, well, do you offer classes or anything? He goes, why would you want to take a class from me? I said, I want to learn what you know, because you're doing stuff different than what I do, and I'd like to learn, and I'd love to pay for your time, learn how to make Damascus, learn how to do some of this stuff. And so I started going over to Joe's shop after hours. So I'd get off at the barber shop at 5, and then I'd shoot over there and about 5:30, 5:45, I'd be at Joe's shop, and then we would make knives until 9, 10 o'clock, and then I'd go home. He'd go home. He'd come back to the forge the next day. I'd be at the barber shop, and just this great friendship grew. And so I got to know his wife. She's working in there in the shop with him, and she says to me one day, she says, "Davy, you need to apply for Forged and Fire." And I said, "No, they don't want people like me. They want people like you, And I'm telling Joe, you need to go back on the show, because what you're doing now, this is really cool." And he's like, "No." He said, "You need to go on the show." I'm like, "No, they're not going to." And so they started pushing me. "You really need," and I'm like, "No, they have professional bladesmiths. They have people that do this full time. They have blacksmiths on there. I'm a barber." He said, "They want people just like you." And I said, "Well, I don't even know what I'd have to do to apply. I don't even know anything about this." And Joe's wife, Chandy, she says, "When they open up for casting, I'll send you the link." She said, "You promise that you'll do it if I send it to you?" I said, "Yes, ma'am, I'll do it." And I mean, I don't know, it's 6, 8 weeks later, and sure enough, they had an open casting call. And so Chandy sends me the link. She said, "Hey, you better put your money where your mouth is." And I said, "Okay." And so I filled out the application. It's like a 4-page application, and they want to know everything you've ever done. And they tell you at the top of the application, do not write down anything you've not done. If you've never worked with a coal forge, do not write down that you're comfortable coal forging, because when they build those episodes, they want to put people that have same level of skill sets.
Yeah.
They're going to throw enough, monkey wrenches at you to really challenge you. But it's even worse if you can't get a fire going in a coal forge.
Yeah.
And so when I filled all this out, I had done a coal forge once. So, do you feel, and I think the question was worded, do you feel confident in your ability to work a coal forge? And I said, no, not at all. Because I thought, I don't want to get, hooked on that. And I said, but I'm real good at lighting a propane forge. So if you hand me a lighter, I can do that, but don't make me do a coal forge. And so I filled out the application, and you send it in, or you email it. I think a month, 6 weeks went by, and then I got a phone call. And I was working at the barbershop, and this lady calls me. She goes, "Is this Davy Wilson?" I said, "It is." She said, "Well, this is so-and-so with Forged and Fire. I'm a casting director, and I'd like to visit with you. Have you got time to talk to me for about 30 minutes? I said, "Absolutely not. We're busy at the barbershop." I said, "Thanks for calling." And she said, "Well, when is a good time?" I said, "How about you call me at 10 o'clock on Monday morning?" I said, "I'm off on Mondays." I said, "By 10 o'clock, I'll be taking a break from the knife shop. So call me then." And I hung up. And to my surprise, 10 o'clock Monday morning rolled around, and she called me. And we talked for 45 minutes. And she asked me just, questions about how I got into this, what pushed me into knife making, how do I feel I would compete, is it something I even really want to do, And we talked for about 45 minutes and got off the phone. I get a phone call 2 weeks later, and she said, "Hey, I've sent your your phone interview to one of our producers, and they like what you had to say. They'd like to set up a Skype interview." I said, "Okay, that sounds great. What's Skype?" Because I had no clue what. And she's like, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Like FaceTime?" And I'm like, "Okay." I said, "I bet it's something my daughter knows about." I said, "I'll ask my daughter, and we'll get it figured out." And so my daughter was at school at ORU. I called her and told her what was going on. She said, "Dad, we'll get you set up." So she actually came home that weekend and helped me get my Skype thing
that's sweet of her.
Set up. Yeah. And so we get that set up. And, this is going, so that was kind of the end of 2019, and then we're going into 2020. I did the Skype interview in February of 2020. with this producer from New York City, and it was about a 45-minute Skype interview. And it's funny, having never done anything like that, he wanted to see examples of some of my knives. Well, this is February. I had sold everything I had for Christmas at December. So here I am. I need some knives to show him. I don't have anything, but I can't tell people what I'm doing because they don't. Once you got to this part of the process, they have asked you don't put this on social media. Don't talk about this, because if we choose you, we need to keep that under wraps. And so I contact a bunch of local people in the area that had bought knives from me in the past, and I simply said, I've got an opportunity. There's a customer wanting to see some of my work. What I would like to do is, would you bring your knife to me? I'll give it a spa treatment. I'll clean it up. I'll sharpen it. If there's any rust or anything on it, I'll get rid of that, and I'll get your knife back into brand new condition if you'll allow me to show it to a potential customer. And everyone I contacted was like, yeah, we're in. And so by the time I did the Skype interview, I had 7 or 8 knives to show. Yeah. Showed them the knives, get the interview done. And at the end of the interview, it was one of those things. We're going to send your interview up to one of the executive producers. At this point, don't call us, we'll call you. And they said, if you don't hear from us in the next 4 to 6 weeks, then you can contact the casting producer and find out what you need to do different to present yourself in a way that you could be on Forged in Fire. And I said, okay. And so, being the first time I've used Skype, I said, well, he says, is there anything else you need from me? And I'm like, well, I wanted to take this opportunity to say thank you. Thanks for having me on, and I appreciate the consideration. And I don't know how long I talked to a blank screen, but I guess when when I said thank you, he hung up, and I had just been blathering on. And so at that point, I felt like, oh my gosh, you ding-a-ling. And so I'd done the Skype interview at my barber shop because it was on a Monday, and I didn't want to be interrupted. I set up at the barber shop with an iPad and did the interview. So put everything up, and I get in the truck, and I'm driving to the house, and my daughter calls me. And she's like, well, Dad, how'd it go? And I said, awful. They don't want somebody like me. They need somebody polished. They need somebody like an actor. They want somebody that knows how to carry themselves, and they're not looking for me. I just feel like this didn't go the best that it could have, and so and a lot of it was because they wanted you to talk in first person. They'd say, I need you to introduce yourself, tell us how old you are and where you're from. And so I said, Davy Wilson, Branson, Missouri, 49. Yeah. And he's like, no, stop. He said, I need you to say, hi, my name's Davy Wilson. I'm from Branson, Missouri. I'm 49 years old. Right. And I'm like, oh, okay. And so then I would do it again. Right. And so
they're kind of documentary style. They got to
yes.
You got to.
You're narrating your own
the
story.
Question before you answer the question that they just asked you, and it can be a bit confusing at times.
It was, and not really. I'm not an actor. I'm just being me. And so there were several times he goes, "Stop! I need you to remember what we talked about." And so I got to feeling like the reason that the interview drug on was because I wasn't doing the cues right or hitting my points right or whatever. He was correcting me. And so I'm telling my daughter all this on the phone, and she said, Dad, I bet it's not as bad as you think it is. She said, I bet you did better than you thought. And so I get off the phone with my daughter, and I go in and pop my phone open and check my email, and I had a contract in my inbox from Forged in Fire. Contract, the NDA agreement, and that thing was like 12 pages long.
Oh, boy.
And then we were set to go. So like I say, this was towards the end of February. March the 17th of 2020, the nation shut down. Yeah. And they shut my barber shop down, and COVID was like a real thing. And I remember that first day of getting up and not going to the barbershop. And, now my wife works at Lowe's.
Yeah.
And so she went right to work because they were needed, I guess, but for some reason, barbers were not considered as a needed entity during the COVID thing.
Right.
And so.
Yeah, a ton of people just grew out their hair during the time. And
exactly.
Yeah.
And so I sent a message to the first casting director I talked with, and I said, hey, with the advent of this COVID crisis, and I know that I've signed a deal, is the show, what's going to happen with the show? And she said, we're talking with the producer right now. Watch your inbox. You're going to get something. And I think later that afternoon, I finally got an email from the show, and they said, listen, your show's secured. Stay safe, stay healthy. And when we get through this as a nation and we come back and start recording, we will contact you. But the advertisers have already paid everything. We just got to get you recorded, and we can't do that until we come back. And I said, okay. So I spent that time practicing blacksmithing.
Sure you did.
And so Joe was shut down. I was shut down. So I just go to Joe's Forge every day and hammer it out. And Joe would give me
over at
Silver Anvil. And I would have Joe teach me new things and do new things. And
nice.
And it was great. And so we were able to work that with people started getting COVID money. And paychecks, so I'm not able to go to work at the barbershop. And I've always said for years, if I'm not behind that chair cutting hair, I'm not making money.
Yeah.
So here I'm home, and I'm not eligible for that COVID money because I'm self-employed. And so I'm at home wondering, working in the forge, making knives. And, I saw a meme that they did with Will Ferrell, and he's out there calling out, and it said, bladesmiths everywhere. I know it's COVID, but you want to buy a knife? Everybody's selling knives out here.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I had clients contacting me.
Yeah.
Saying, Davy, have you got that knife I was looking at the shop? Last time I got well, yeah, I mean, all the knives I had at the shop are still there. Can you meet me over there? And I'm like, you want to buy a knife right now? And they said, I'm making more money now than I've ever made in my life. And I've got mad money to spend. And I said, then I've got a knife for you. And I sold out of knives. And then I started treating my forge like my everyday job. And I had custom orders start coming in, and I started doing all this and making knives and just practicing forging every day. And then, months later, I get the phone call. Hey, we're starting filming. It was the week of Thanksgiving of 2020. I get the phone call to come back. And I think it was the day after Thanksgiving, Black Friday, they called me. And by December 2nd, I was at Stamford, Connecticut on the set of Forged in Fire, recording round 1 and round 2. And
nice.
It was I can't say it was like a dream come true, but my wife probably gave me the best piece of information about this. She said when she drove me to the airport, because I had to do COVID tests. I took more COVID tests during this time than probably anybody I know. And I never got COVID through the whole time. Wow. I didn't get the shot. I never got COVID. I just didn't get sick.
Nice.
And, thankfully, I did get bit by a tick and got some tick-borne illness. But beyond that, I was fine. So I never got COVID. And I sent the last COVID test back into them. And they called me on the phone. They said, all right, we've got your flight information. They called me at 12:45, and I was flying out at 2 p.m. From Springfield. And so I had an hour and 15 minutes to get to the airport. And I had my go bag ready. But I remember we pulled in there, and my wife gave me this great piece of information. And she stopped me, and she said, listen. She said, don't let one moment of this experience pass you by that you didn't live in it. Live in every moment. Just don't let any moment pass you by. And that was before I got at the airport to go onto the airplane. And when I walked into the airport, they were calling my name over the intercom. Davy Wilson, we are holding the plane at gate 7.
We
are waiting on you. And this guy, the baggage guy, goes, are you Davy Wilson? I said, I'm Davy Wilson. You need to get over here. And so I'm giving him my stuff. You need to run. And so fat guys don't normally run, but I was trying to run. And I'll never forget, there was some lady standing outside the coffee area.
Yeah.
She goes, sir, would you like coffee? And I said, yes, I would. And I grabbed the coffee and I'm running. And then when I get to the plane and the stewardess is at the end, she goes, are you Davy Wilson? I said, I'm Davy Wilson. She said, well, come on, we need to get you on. And so I get on this little plane, and they're going to hop me from Springfield to Chicago.
Oh, so this is a little tiny private plane?
Well, not a private plane, but just one of those American Airlines
tubes,
the
yes.
tiny ones.
Okay, I've been on a couple of those.
2 seats, 1 seat.
Mm-hmm.
So I get on this plane, and this stewardess, beautiful black lady, and she's about 6'2", big lady, beautiful. Mm-hmm. She said, we've been waiting on you, honey. And I said, well, I'm ready to go. And I get on that plane, and they are packed, and they are angry. And all these angry eyes are looking over their masks at me. And I don't realize the optics. You got some fat guy, looks like Santa Claus, holding a cup of coffee, the mask hanging off the ear. And I get on there, and they're angry because they've been waiting on me.
Sure.
And they're like, oh, he got coffee even, had time for coffee. I'm like, oh, my gosh, everyone hates me on this plane. And the whole time, all I'm thinking is, just absorb every moment. Don't let one moment of this experience pass you by. And so I'm like, cheers. And I find my seat. I get set down, and I go to put the belt on, and I realize that all these airplanes, because the last time I'd flown was like in 1999, and all these airplanes have shrunk because I couldn't get the seatbelt on. And so that when the stewardess, she come back by, and I said, ma'am, I can't. And she digs in her pocket, and she pulls out the extended thing. Mm-hmm. She hooks me up, gets me fastened in. She goes, oh, honey, she said, I don't think they're happy with you. And I said, I'll be nice to everyone. She said, we'll be okay. But from that moment on, through the whole experience of doing the show, and then them coming to my house and recording at my home forge, and then the show actually airing and having a watch party at the poorhouse in Hollister.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
It was such a surreal thing. Mm-hmm. And it caused this hobby of mine that, back when Dad and I took the class, to just skyrocket. And I'm humbled and thankful for this whole opportunity to have done that. And then we use that now. My wife and I travel all over and do these knife shows, and we get to meet young kids and new knife makers and stuff. And we just encourage people to embrace this and do this and enjoy it, whatever aspect of it is you want to enjoy. But it's been a whirlwind of an experience and has been a great experience. And it didn't hurt when I decided to run for office to have a little bit of popularity, if you will.
So coming to that, you are a very interesting person. You've certainly had a very interesting life, I'll put it that way. You could have wound up in entertainment. You could have wound up staying a barber. You could have wound up doing your knife stuff and make any one of those things a full-time career. Mm-hmm. You could, and you're somehow juggling at least those last two. But then, what on earth would drive you to decide to run for local office? It seemed, yeah.
I've been told that is probably the dumbest thing that I have ever made the decision to do, and especially the office. So I ran for and actually won the office for Taney County Assessor. Mm-hmm. The assessor is the person that comes out and assesses the valuation of your real estate, your real property, and your personal property, your cars, your trucks, your boats, your trailers, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. What probably the catalyst for me doing that was in 2020 when all the COVID stuff had gone on.
Yeah.
I noticed an increase in my taxes on my house. Mm-hmm. And so I called the assessor's office to find out why, when our nation is shut down, when I've been sent home and I'm not seen as a required entity, I can't work. Mm-hmm. I didn't qualify for the all the COVID money that everybody else celebrated. why on earth would you raise my assessment on my home? And so I called over there, and the assessor, Susan Chapman, she said that when she took the office, that the state tax commission sent out a memo to all of the counties in Missouri, so there's 114 counties in Missouri, sent out a memo and said, you must raise your tax index in your county. And if you don't, then we will withhold funding to your county. And she said, in the state tax commission, that funding underwrites my office. And so if I didn't make this tax increase, this index increase, they would withhold my funding. Mm-hmm. And so I said to her, I said, well, wait a second. I said, so you're saying you just got in office, you just won your election. Yes. And I said, and the first thing you're doing is raising the tax index, which causes all of our taxes to increase because the assessment went up, which directly coincides to the amount of taxes I pay. Right. And if I didn't, they would withhold my, I said, right. So either you raise this or we withhold this money. She goes, now you got it. I said, that's extortion and that's illegal. She said, well, that's what I had to do. And I said, well, honey, that's not a good way to win re-election. And she said, and this is what she told me at the time on the phone. She said, listen, I wasn't planning on running for re-election. I'm just planning on getting this county right. And I said, well, yeah, I don't see you. I don't see how you could win re-election running it that way. She said, well, if you think you're so good at it, maybe you should put your money where your mouth is and you run for office. And she hung up on me. So that's in 2020. Mm-hmm. So that was a catalyst. That got me to thinking about this job. And so fast forward to 2024, and the whole time, I've got the majority of my clients are veterans, retirement age folks. I mean, we live in a retirement community, basically, the Ozarks here, Branson area especially. People retire from their jobs and they move to this area. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of my clients are these guys that are coming in. And I start hearing stories from veterans that are saying, man, I'm getting taxed out of house and home here. Right. Or they come in.
A lot of those people are setting up their retirement, acting as though the world's not going to change.
Yes.
And expenses are going to stay the same.
And it's changing.
And it's changing. And when you start ratcheting up and making, I don't know, more expensive rent for, the county lending you the property you bought.
Yeah. It seems really off to me.
Yeah.
The funny thing, my son, he's probably this far away from being an anarchist. He tells me often that he feels that taxation is theft and that, he wouldn't care if the government folded up and we just everybody survived off of what they know how to do. And, he's young, so he gets to have these ideas.
Yeah.
And
I felt that way when I was 18, 19. Yeah.
So coming into this, after hearing all these stories, it was a morning in January, and my brother had just finished a haircut with a veteran. The gentleman walked out the door, and my brother says to me, he goes, that's it. He said, I can't take it anymore. I said, take what anymore? He said, listen, either run for office or we quit talking about this stuff because I cannot bear to hear another example of people being taxed out of their homes. He said, I'm sick of it. He said, do something. And I said, well, Steve, I've got the barber shop. I've got the knife business. I'll be honest. I got too much on my plate. I can't do that. Mm-hmm. And my brother says to me, he said, listen, I'll take care of the knife or the barber shop. Make the knife shop, figure out how to get it back to your hobby so that it's not your second job. And he said, you've got the right ideas. You have the heart of the people. Go do this job and do it in such a way that you can make that office start serving people in Taney County again and not just trying to knock them for every dollar they've got. And so that was when my brother and I, it wasn't just because, you come to the barbershop if it wasn't for religion, politics, and the weather, we wouldn't have nothing to talk about. So we talk that's a constant conversation going on for years, has been politics, religion, and the weather at the barbershop, and knife making, fishing, hunting, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And so now I'm at the point of, not to be crude, but it's either poop or get off the pot and do something. And so I started with both of us, my brother and myself, we started researching what the office of the assessor actually does and what they really, how they affect, what that office does that affects people right down here in Forsyth, Missouri, Hollister, Missouri, Branson, Missouri. And what we found was, at its most simplest form, there's only 4 people in the nation that affect what you and I pay in taxes. Number one, it's the President of the United States. Mm-hmm. Number 2, it's the governor of your state. Number 3, it's the state tax commission. And then number 4, it's your county assessor. And so if any one of those 4 people do not have the rights of the people at forefront in their mind and know that they serve, the priority of what they do is to serve the public that put them in office. If they get that backwards and they think that the people are there to serve them, then you're going to be overwhelmed with taxes. But if you get the right people in office and they understand that there is a place of value, of fairness, then your taxes are going to be fair and equitable, and you're going to be able to survive and pay and not feel like everybody's getting in your pocket. Mm-hmm. And so when we started, that's very simplified, but when we started looking at this, what I found out was you have statutes. Statutes are laws. Yeah. And laws are black and white. Mm-hmm. But then you have policy. Well, people use policy to define statutes, and if you have a heart for the people, then you're going to use that policy to define that statute in the best interests of the people. If you think you work for big government, you will use those policies to define that statute in the best interest of keeping the machine of the government moving. Mm-hmm. And so there needs to be middle ground. You need to find a place. We all enjoy, if we have to call 911, we like the fact there's somebody else that picks up the phone. Mm-hmm. And whether we need fire, ambulance, law enforcement, whatever, someone is going to come. So we like that. We like that our taxes pay for that. We enjoy having good education, quality education, whether at Forsyth High School, Bradleyville, Branson, Hollister. We enjoy that. And we know that our taxes, especially in Taney County, because our county runs off the sales tax revenue that's generated in this county, and the biggest portion comes from tourism coming in and through Branson. Mm-hmm. But the taxes that you and I pay for our real estate or our personal property, those taxes, that's what goes to the schools. That's what goes to the emergency services. That's what goes to OTC, the college, health services, senior services. That's where our tax money, our tax dollars go. But the county itself runs off the sales tax revenue. There's only 3 counties in the state of Missouri that run that way. Mm-hmm. And Taney County is awash with money. We're in the black. We're not running in the red. Yeah. Taney County runs in the black, and that's because we've had in the past good, solid leadership that make quality decisions. So when I ran for this office, the whole reason I did is because I felt like the person, Mrs. Chapman, that is currently in the office, I felt like she did not understand the plight of the common, everyday, middle-class American that lives here in Taney County. And the reason I don't think she understood that is because I heard it in the stories of people that had retired here, had moved here, or on the other side, people that were born and raised here, that lived on these centennial farms in the eastern side of the county. That one lady I heard about, the farm was her let's see, her great grandfather's farm. She is a 80, 90-year-old grandma.
So they homesteaded that?
Homesteaded that place.
Yeah.
And it's down in Bradleyville. And this lady, her taxes went from 300 and something a year, and it jumped to almost 4,000 a year.
Wow.
Now, she is living off Social Security. She's lived on that farm her whole life. Mm-hmm. Her grandson that was telling me about her story, she will probably die on that farm. Mm-hmm. And when he sat in my chair, he said, "What do I do?" And I said, it sounds to me like, that's too big a jump. And he said, well, they said that her property hadn't been assessed in the last 20 years. I said, well, it's probably so. And when he described where the farm was at down the lane, I can understand. If it's a Friday and the field assessors are out and this farm is another 2 miles down this lane, and they're like, you know what, we'll start Monday there and we'll come back. And then something happens over the weekend. Monday comes in, they come in, and they got to go to this side of the county, and they're not over there. And so I can see how it can get overlooked for several years.
Sure.
So it's not that farm, it's not that grandma's fault that she hadn't been reassessed in 20 years.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it is wrong for that office holder to go, you know what, yeah, you haven't been assessed in 20 years, so we're going to do 20 years of makeup in 1 year. Not only is it morally wrong, it's just illegal because it runs up against statutes that are set in place to protect the people, like the Hancock Amendment. You cannot have your property taxes, according to the Hancock Amendment, you can't have your taxes raised over 15% in 1 calendar year.
Is that Missouri State Constitution?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
what exactly does that state? Is there more to it than just that?
Yeah, there's more to it than just that. And I've looked at the statute books, mm-hmm. and I should have counted them when I went up to Christian County and visited with that assessor a couple of weeks ago, mm-hmm. and he pointed out, he said, all these books are the statutes that apply to your office. And it's like a stack of encyclopedias, mm-hmm. about this wide, and each book's about that thick, and it's all statutes. Mm-hmm. That this office runs off of. And he said, you're not going to be required to memorize all them, but you will need to know where to find them in those books. And it's like reading an encyclopedia. So
sure it is.
You got to pull it out, pull the statute. I'm satisfied nowadays I could Google a statute and it's going to pop up. And a lot of what I have learned in just my self-training, if you will, in my study of the assessor's office, has been getting online, looking up the Office of Assessor, going to the website, the Taney County website, reading the forms, reading the page. And if you're having trouble going to sleep at night, just try to read some statutes. It'll put you to sleep, I promise you.
Yeah.
But that job of the assessor, mm-hmm. I'm to be the mediator between you, the landowner, the taxpayer, mm-hmm. and the state who wants me to use this statute to assess the valuation of your property. And we know that you pay your taxes to the levying entities based on what I assess the valuation of your house. Now, I will say this, Taney County is one of the lesser assessed counties in the state. Mm-hmm. It's one of the more less expensive places to live. It's not the cheapest. It's not the most expensive, but we're kind of in the middle of the road. And the reason that we've been able to keep our property assessed values and the assessed values of our personal property, reasonable, is because the county runs off of the sales tax revenue that's generated by the tourism that comes in.
Right. Which is the highest in Missouri. Is that right?
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so.
Yeah. But it makes sense for the kind of industry we run on.
Well, sure. And because of that.
Yeah.
The last thing we want to do is turn this into a Colorado Springs or a Los Angeles or someplace where land values shoot through the roof, assessed values shoot through the roof, and then people can't afford to live here.
Yeah.
Because we always have to take into, I feel like as an elected official, I need to take into consideration what the average amount of money that people make in this area, that live in this area. I meet people every day that they don't just have one job. they have 3 jobs because they get to work 20 hours at this restaurant. And then they're a bartender at this restaurant on the weekend. Yeah. And then they work, they mow yards through the week.
That's how a lot of the show business is too. My wife, she does the shows in town.
Okay.
And for a long time, if you want to make any money at it, you need to have 3 or 4 different gigs going at the same time. Your schedule's all kind of crazy. You're not working very much at any one place. But
and you don't have benefits either.
And you don't have benefits either. That's right.
Yeah, because you're not full time.
Right. At any one place.
At any one place. So none of them pay you benefits. So if you have any health care, if you have any, if you have just the benefit, let's just talk health care. If you have any health care, you're either on the market system with the national government, or you're just paying cash out of pocket. And that. Thank God for the doctors and the dentists that will work with all the folks that live in this area, because not all of us have health insurance. Not all of us have those kind of benefits.
Right.
And so going into this public office, the catalyst being, put your money where your mouth is. If you think you can do a better job, you run for office. That being an initial push to seeing the actual problems. And working as a barber, I hear people tell me things that they may not tell their kids or their spouse or what they're going through. I hear it. Yeah. And you get to, I'm part of the fabric of thousands of people's lives because I'm their barber.
Right.
And it's a safe place for them to sit and talk to me. Right. But when I hear and I stack those stories together and I realize we need to do something different, something needs to change. So I decided to run for that office. Now, I have had clients tell me that I have lost my ever-loving mind for running for this office because they equate the assessor's office as a tax man.
Yeah.
And I get that because it directly affects what you pay in taxes. But I think that you put the person with the right personality, and I'm not saying I'm the right person. I'm just saying I care about people. And I've always led from, in all the businesses that I've owned and run, in all the places I've worked, I feel like my best quality is I'm a people person, and I want to treat people well. And when I was younger, that got me run over a lot, and I got to be a doormat for a lot of people. But as I've gotten older and more mature, what I've realized is I can honor people and have boundaries and be able to help people be the best they can be. And so I feel like, and it's sad, but I get phone calls now, or people come to the barbershop and they're mad at some of the ladies at the assessor's office, or this person said this, or they were rude to me on the phone. And I hope that changes when you get in, and they're just frustrated. And the thing that I realized, and I said to them one time, I said, have you ever worked for somebody that was a hard boss? They expected too much and paid too little. You always walked on eggshells around them. You always felt like they were out to get you. Have you ever worked for somebody like that? And oh yeah, man, it was horrible. I hate it. I said, that might be where some of these folks in that office have been. They feel like they're under pressure. They're under the gun. They walk on eggshells. And I said, that's a hard place to work. So number one, I want to give credit where credit's due. Anybody that's had to work in that assessor's office, hats off to them, because that's a hard job. Because every time a person comes to them, you think about it, they've probably already had a 10-minute argument in the car on the way to the assessor's office because they're mad about their taxes or their assessment going up, which directly affects the amount of money they pay in taxes.
Sure.
And so they've already had this imaginary argument.
Yeah.
And then they get to the office, and then they're snippy to the lady at the front desk.
And they got to deal with that customer after
customer,
not customer, but person after
person. And now they're on defense.
Right.
So now you got two people that are already defensive. How do you think that conversation is going to go? That's not going to be good.
Right.
Because, at the barbershop, somebody walks in, they hey, Davy, am I next? Yep, come on, have a seat. And I put a cape on him, and I put the neck strip on him. How are you today? Oh, man, I'm good. I've been looking I'm needing a haircut. Well, what are we going to do on your haircut? Oh, I want this, cut it this way. Or do what you did last time. That worked really well. Okay, that's great. We're going to get your hair cut. And takes 10 minutes. They get done. They've enjoyed their haircut. Maybe they've had a cup of coffee. Maybe they sit and just visit. And then, hey, man, it's good seeing you. I'll be back. Good to see you again. And they leave. Had a great conversation, a great experience, because they're not coming in defensive. They're not coming in angry. They're not coming in expecting a fight. I truly believe that when I take over at the assessor's office, that there's going to be a sigh of relief. And I've been told, I'm not imagining this. I've been told that people that have had to work in the assessor's office walk on eggshells. When they come and they see me, they go, we can't wait for you to start. We're so excited you're going to start. When you find out that in the last 4.5 years at the assessor's office, the turnover, they've had 35 employees go through that assessor's office. Not the county. I'm talking just this one office that I think the office should have. One person told me that they should have, it's the assessor up in Christian County. He said, your office should employ somewhere between 15 and 20 people to do that job well, for that office to run well. It should have about that many employees, depending on he said you can have less employees if they have more experience. If they don't have more experience, you're going to need more employees to spread the workload out. But he said that's what you need, and this office has had a turnover. They've fired or let go of 34, 35 people in 4.5 years. Just this one office. That's amazing.
It's a good bit. Yeah.
That's a huge turnover rate. So when you see high turnover, it either tells me, one, it's a very, very hard job and they don't pay enough, and that could be.
Could be that they're bad at hiring.
Or two, they're not hiring the right people.
Yeah.
Or it could be whoever is the head of that office is not a people person.
Yeah.
And if you have it's my way or the highway mentality,
right,
you're going to have a small crew.
Right.
In all the years that I've been barbering, all the businesses that I've run back when I was a general contractor and stuff, I never had any trouble working with people. And in all the years that I've done this stuff, I've only ever had to fire 2 people. And both times it was because they were stealing. So because of that, if you steal from me, I can't trust you,
Sure.
So I can't work it. I'm not, making a judgment on your character or anything, but I personally, if you steal from me, I can't do it. I can't work with you. But other problems I can work through. Family problems, scheduling, workload. There's workarounds. We can figure something out. And the thing that I've always felt like when building a team of people is if I know that you're trained well and I give you the right tools to do your job, and then I give you the autonomy to do your job, I'm not going to micromanage you. I'm not going to be looking over your shoulder. You know what the expectations are. If you can be here, meet the expectations, we're going to have a good time.
Yeah.
And I've always had fun workplaces. I've never had a stressful environment. I won't work in that. And I won't demand that somebody else work in that. And I've done high stress jobs where things have to be right. When you're building a home, you have codes to meet. Things have to be right. You have deadlines you have to hit. Things have to be right. And so there is enough stress already wired into the job. I don't need to add stress by looking over your shoulder. I don't need to add stress by being an a-hole to you every time you come in, or add stress that you think you're going to get fired if you say the wrong thing. No. Let's work together and let's build a good team. And so that's what I'm hoping and expecting to bring to this office. And I start September 2nd.
I was going to ask when you start.
And
Very good.
I'm excited about starting. I look at my start as a fresh start in that office. I had a guy call me the other day. He said, Davey, I need to schedule an appointment with you on September the 3rd. And I said, well, Bob, I'm not going to be at the barbershop on September 3rd. I'll be working at the courthouse over in Forsyth. And he said, that's what I'm talking about. He said, I need to meet with you on September the 3rd to look at my property stuff to make sure this is done right. And I said, well, Bob, I don't have a schedule yet. I don't know what it's going to be like on the. He said, well, I've got all day. And I said, well, how about this, Bob? I said, and he may be watching this or whatever later, but I said, why don't we do this? How about you show up at 10 o'clock, pile into the chaos with the rest of us, and together, you and I and somebody else is going to help us figure out and make sure that everything's on the up and up on your property card. Well, okay, I'll see you on the 3rd. And he hangs up the phone. And I thought, that is the craziest thing, because he was already expecting me to know exactly what's going to happen when I get there.
Yeah.
And the truth is once I get into that office, I'm going to have every employee that's working there show me what they do and tell me how their job goes. And then I want them to tell me what you hate about this.
Yeah.
And why you hate it. And then let's see if we can fix that. Because I want to keep people. I want people to want to work in that office, to want to work there.
It's expensive to train people.
It is. And, you know, I'd heard once or read it in leadership books that it takes 6 months for a company to start seeing the value of an employee. So there's 6 months. Well, I'm coming into this elected office and I'll be expected to hit the ground running. And so for me to be able to be the best I can be, I need my team around me to teach me what they do, show me what they do. And then I see my position is all those, you know, Bobs and Johns and Larrys and Janets and Joes and all those people that are coming in upset because they don't understand what was going on before. I see my job is come on in, let's have a cup of coffee and sit down. There's nothing that you and I can't figure out. We can come to an agreement.
Have you met with some of the people that are currently on the team there?
So I've only briefly met a few of them because the campaign was a hard campaign. I've never run for office before.
Yeah.
This was my first time doing so.
Yeah.
My opponent, the incumbent, it was her race to lose, and she did it in grand fashion. She was not easy to get along with. There was a few unpleasantries that were shared, and I finally just realized we're not going to see eye to eye. At one point, there was actual confrontation, if you will, and she butted into the middle of me speaking to another voter, constituent, neighbor, if you will, and she just marched right into the middle of it and basically told him, she said, he doesn't understand anything he's saying. Let me set you straight. And that was how she began, and she interrupted the conversation. And when she was done speaking, I said, you still did not answer his question. So since you butted in, how about you answer that question? And she said, well, you wouldn't understand if I did. And I said, basically, I need you to quit following me around. I need you to stop interjecting. What you just did was the most unprofessional, unneighborly thing that I've ever had happen. So please stop following me. And she said, we don't have to be enemies. I said, yes, but we're probably not going to be friends. And I'll be honest with you, I've been friends with everybody. We don't have to agree on politics. We don't have to agree on Chevy or Ford or fishing versus hunting. We don't agree on anything.
Yeah.
But we can always be cordial.
Yeah.
And she made it very clear that that was not going to happen. And then so after I won the election, it was about 2 or 3 weeks after the election, she actually called. And she said, she said, well, I guess congratulations. And I said, well, thank you.
I guess thank you.
Yeah. And she said, first thing I want you to know is you don't go into office until next September. So this was after the primary election that happened last August. I said, I understand that. She said, you'll not be working in this office with me. I said, I didn't plan on working with you. And she told me that I was welcome to go to any other county and talk to their assessors or shadow their assessors, but
not to
Taney County.
Wow.
I found out later that one of the deputies told me that they were under orders that if Davy Wilson showed up at her office, that I would be escorted out of the courthouse. And I talked with one of the commissioners about that, and they told me anytime I wanted to come over there, they would walk me down there and introduce me to everybody in that office. And the reality is this: I'm not trying to make it hard on people.
Sure.
And I'm not trying to I definitely don't want to make it hard on the people that are working in that office.
Right. Because
she has fired so many people, the last thing I want is to walk in on my first day to an empty office because, she gutted it.
Yeah.
And, the reality is she has the power to do so. She had whistleblowers. If you Google Taney County Assessor Susan Chapman, if you just Google that, you'll come up with all these news articles where whistleblowers had called her out on stuff she was doing that wasn't right in the office. And I don't know if she got so much as a slap on the hands, but I do know that all those people that brought the truth to light were fired. And see, that's not the way to run any office or business for that matter. And so
have you reached out to any of those people by chance? In the case that she does gut the office,
yes,
you could hire some of those people back.
So I have talked to a few of those folks.
Yeah.
I've talked to, it's really great about Taney County because over there at the courthouse, it is like a family. That's the feel that you get is every office knows every other office. They all try to work together.
Yeah.
So I talked with some of the commissioners, and they actually were able to save some of those people that Susan had fired.
Very good.
When they were walked over to the HR department, I guess.
Yeah.
The commission stepped in and said, well, we've got a position open over at Road and Bridge, or we've got a position open at the prosecutor's office or county clerk, whatever. So those people, they moved them around so that they didn't lose their tenure. One of the first gentlemen that was let go out of that office had 30 years or more in that office. And I guess he was gone like the first day or first week or something is what I'd heard.
Wow.
And so he's still with the county, though. They just moved him. And you think about their retirement and everything. If they'd have just let them walk out, they'd have lost that. And, that's not okay. You can't let this kind of stuff go to your head because you're making decisions that affects people's and their families' lives. And I recognize that. And so when you have employees, anytime that you make a decision for that employee, whether getting them a raise or helping them with their workload or what, that's helping them better their life. And, in this office, it's a hard enough job as it is without feeling like every day you come in, is this my last day? Am I going to say something that's going to cause me to lose my job? So I want to keep everyone that I can in that office. And for the most part, I hope Susan's reasonable when she goes out and doesn't do anything to wreck it.
Yeah. I hope so too.
I really do. Yeah. I hope that I'm wrong. I hope that I've had that it was just the Susan that I met through the campaign was just the Susan fighting to keep this job. And so I hope I'm wrong about her, that her character will show that she'll prove me wrong. I hope she proves me wrong and that her character will show that she actually wants the best for her employees and the best for her people there. So time will tell, though.
Yeah.
We'll find out on September 2nd when I walk in.
Well, unfortunately, we need to wrap up.
I understand.
But it's been great talking with you.
You too.
Jumping back to Susan Chapman following you around, what's the best way for people to follow you on the internet? Do you have social media platform anywhere that somebody could follow you in a more reasonable fashion?
Yeah, so if you want to see me, it's Davy Wilson Jehu Knives on Facebook.
Mm-hmm. That's Jehu.
Jehu Knives. I've got a website, jehuknives.com, and then beyond that, Instagram is Jehu Knives. But yeah, that's probably the easiest way. Or just come by the barbershop there in Hollister.
Okay.
And check me out.
All right. I'll put links to those in the description of the video so people can find you more easily.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming and talking with me, sir.
My pleasure. Thanks so much.
I hope to have you on again very shortly.
We'll do it.